Throughout the story in the xianzhou luofu, aside from the capture of Kafka, the main character and the Nameless were also tasked with routing out a rather extremist group called the Disciples of Sanctus Medicus. These parts of the main story quest seem rather out of place in the beginning, as it appeared to have little to do with the actual main story at the time. But by the end, it's revealed that the person who has been helping us is actually the leader of the group we were hunting. DanShu's betrayal came really out of nowhere, at least for me. Despite her rather abrupt departure, the story itself doesn't really expand on why she is motivated to act the way she does. That is until you learn more about her past. Before I explain why Dan Shu decided to betray the xianzhou alliance, if you want to see more Honkai Star Rail content, do consider subscribing to the channel. We first meet Dan Shu halfway through the events of the xianzhou main story. She was described as an exceptional pharmacologist despite being visually impaired, and the main character received help from her when trying to decipher an immortality drug concocted by the disciples of the Sanctus Medicus. As you know, by the end of this story, it's revealed that Dan Shu is actually the leader of the disciples of Sanctus Medicus. This particular group actually venerate the Eon of Abundance Yaoshi, contrary to the beliefs of many in the xianzhou luofu, who ally themselves with the Eon of the Hunt. There is a long feud between these two aeons which I won't be getting into, but just so you have some context, the xianzhou alliance had once long ago allied themselves with Yaoshi first. But after her gifts of immortality, and this is how they have long lives, and the problems that they caused, the alliance sought out to right their wrongs and switch sides, allying themselves instead with the Eon of the Hunt. This is why in the time frame of the current story, reverting their allegiances back to Yaoshi is seen as a big no-no. Despite knowing this is exactly what DanShu has done, but it isn't for an arbitrary reason, as we find out in her diaries. Long before the events of the main story, DanShu was once a believer of the Eon of the Hunt, Lan. Much like many others in the xianzhou luofu, she adhered to their beliefs despite her disability. When she was younger, many would bully her for being blind, but each time she took it as a test from the Rainbow Arbiter. You see, for those with long lives, disabilities like blindness are far more challenging or difficult to deal with, as there are no methods of healing, and living with such a disability for hundreds if not thousands of years is not an easy feat. Despite this, DanShu was steadfast, as one day it would seem as though the Arbiter of the Hunt had heard her prayers and sent her a friend. This friend, Yu Fei, would often come to her aid whenever she needed it, and both of them worked hard supporting each other. They eventually ended up in the Alchemy Commission, with DanShu becoming one of the best alchemists in the entire xianzhou luofu, and Yu Fei being one of its best healers. Together, they had wished to help those who suffer with disabilities, also known as the incomplete ones, and had spent most of their time and life in pursuit of this goal. Unfortunately, this wouldn't last long, as DanShu would eventually lose Yu Fei. If you recall, I mentioned earlier that the Eon of the Hunt has a long-standing feud with the Eon of Abundance. As Yaoshi proliferated life throughout the cosmos, Lan would be right behind her, hunting and killing the abominations she would bring to life. Because the Alliance had taken this path as well, war and battles were not anything new to the denizens of the xianzhou Alliance. As one of the many wars ignited, Yu Fei was conscripted into the army to act as a healer for their soldiers. As the war raged on, DanShu was left to continue her research alone, and after exhausting all options, as well as not hearing from her friend due to the war, she started to entertain even slightly a solution she has long overlooked. Maybe an answer does exist to solve the plight of the incomplete ones, and perhaps the answer lied with the Eon of Abundance. Though she entertained this possibility in her mind, she was still loyal to the Rainbow Arbiter and did not pursue it any further. Eventually though, the war ended, and the Alliance had won, but Yu Fei did not return. Though she looked for a reason, DanShu could never find anyone who could give her a straight answer as to what happened to Yu Fei. What was more perplexing was the fact that her friend was a healer. She would not have been stationed anywhere near where fighting took place, so how could she have died? Well, it turns out the reason the war was won was because Lan itself had descended into the mortal plane, destroying the monsters of abundance itself by using its divine arrows. The powers of the gods are vast and destructive, but often they are not wielded so carefully. And so, despite the rain of arrows felling the beasts of abundance, some of these arrows caused collateral damage and was what killed Yufei among many others. This was the moment DanShu reconsidered everything. She had lost the one friend she had, she lost any possible leads in curing the plight of the incomplete ones, and could no longer even trust the Eon of the Hunt who seemed to have taken everything from her. This was when she truly reconsidered her allegiances. DanShu had been loyal to these beliefs so far, but to what end really? This eventually led her down the road to reassess her allegiances and would eventually accept the gift of the Plague Author. From here, she would orchestrate much of the events that occurred in the main story as we see them. So yes, DanShu is one of the main antagonists for this arc in the story, but whether she is a true villain is difficult to say for sure. She had willingly allowed the main character to leave without much of a fight and even wished to recruit them. It's also quite understandable, at least from her perspective, why she would walk down this path, having lost all trust for the beliefs she once had. She also had no reason to honor an allegiance to people who cared little for her and likely, in her mind, is doing what she thinks is best. A lot of the story doesn't really explain her past, or maybe will in the future as the story evolves, but it makes you think that she's just a straight villain when it's not so simple and it's not so black and white. Now, of course, her actions are considered to be rather extreme, but this is more a fight of ideology rather than anything else. I somehow have a feeling that the main character will need to make a tough decision in the future on which side is right and which side is wrong. And honestly, I don't really look forward to making such a decision. That does it for this video though. If you enjoyed it, do consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. As usual, have a nice day.